Now let's write the implementation of this button, Save Updates. We'll go to Visual Studio Code. In create property listing.tsx, we have the form. And when we are submitting the form, this function is getting called. So that means that when we click on this button, submit listing form data is getting called. Now this function is trying to create the record in the table through this API. So what we'll do is we'll have to modify this function only, because when we click this button over here, that same function is going to get called. But how do I differentiate that either it is trying to create the record in the table or edit the record that is already existing in the table? We are going to do that through source. We already are accepting the source in this component, and this is what we'll be utilizing. So in this function, what we are going to do is we'll have an if condition. If source is comparable to create, then we want to perform all of this code that we already have written for creating the record in the table. But if it is edit scenario, then what we need to do is I'll just utilize this code that we already have in place and paste it over here. So now what I want to do is create the request data again, call a different API. But how do we create the request data? See, this listing form data, it's getting set through the input that are already there on this component. So we don't need to change anything over here. But what we have to do is we need to mention the ID property now. Because when we are trying to create the data, we don't need to send any ID. That is an identity column in the table. It will automatically get created while saving the record, while saving a new record. But when we are trying to edit the details, we need to pass the ID property, because this is the most important property while we are trying to update the data. It is the only unique identifier in the table, and this will be utilized by SQL to update the record. So let's set the ID now. And how do we do that? It is going to be set through edit details.id. This is the property we are setting over here, and let's make sure that it is a numeric value. So just having the conversion also, and rest of the properties can remain the same. The reason is that these were already getting set through the input fields on the form. I'll just save this, and now what we have to do is update the method over here. We had post method for creating the new record, but now we need to set it as put, because if you go to our controller on this web API property listings controller, it is mentioned that we have HTTP post method for the update operation, this particular method. So let's go over here, and now I think the other things can remain the same. We have our solution running, the port number is correct. I'll just save the details, and we are also trying to log the response, and the response that we'll get is details updated successfully. So we'll have it on the console. I'll just open the console once, and over here we'll make some updates. So I'll change the value. Let's keep it. I think this is correct now. And I am changing the city also to Indore. I'll click on save updates, and let me change the mobile number as well and select this one. Clicking on save updates now. So now you see that we are getting the response details updated successfully, and we can verify it in the table as well. This is the old record that we had for Kolkata city. It was rent out or lease, and the value of the property was this for ID 7. And I'll open the new query tab to just show you the comparison between the two records. And now you're able to see that 3 columns that we updated from the screen, that is property value, contact number, and city. All of them are getting updated successfully in the table. It is getting reflected here, and on the screen we are receiving the response message as well. So the edit functionality or third of the CRUD operations is working perfectly now.